Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're diving headfirst into a political storm brewing in Washington. It's February 15th, 2025, and the Department of Health and Human Services, HHS,
Yeah.
is undergoing a major shakeup. We've got news article and reports stacked out, all buzzing about government efficiency, massive layoffs, and some pretty big personalities involved.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we're talking RFK Jr., Elon Musk. Even a whisper of former President Trump's name has popped up.
It's fascinating how this is all unfolding. You've got protests, political meetings happening in the background, and then, boom, suddenly these layoffs hit.
Exactly. And by the end of this deep dive, you'll understand exactly what went down, who's calling the shots, and what it all means for the future of public health in America. But first, let's set the stage. For those who might not be totally familiar with HHS, can you give us a quick overview of what this agency actually does? Why should we care about all of this?
Sure, HHS is a massive agency, arguably one of the most important in the government. Think of it as the central hub for everything health-related in the U.S. They're responsible for preventing disease outbreaks, ensuring the safety of our food and drugs, and managing massive programs like Medicare and Medicaid. So, yeah, they have a pretty significant impact on everyone's life.
Okay, so that's a huge responsibility. And speaking of impact, let's dive into the heart of the matter. These layoffs, we're talking 5,200 employees across the NIH and CDC receiving pink slips. That's not just a trim, it's a complete overhaul.
And a very calculated one, it seems. What's particularly interesting is that these layoffs heavily targeted probationary employees, those relatively new to their positions. Now, you might initially think, oh, this is a standard cost-cutting measure. But here's where it gets interesting. HHS actually retained around 4,000 other probationary employees. This suggests a very deliberate strategy was at play in deciding who stayed and who went.
You mentioned deliberate strategy. That piques my interest. What does retaining some new hires while letting others go tell us about what's happening here?
It suggests that this wasn't just some random budget cut. It was a targeted reshaping of HHS. To understand the method behind this madness, we need to look at who's driving these decisions.
All right, let's meet the players then. First up, we've got Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the new HHS Secretary. He's not exactly known for shying away from controversy, is he?
Definitely not. He's already made waves with some strong statements, particularly about HHS staffers with tied to the pharmaceutical industry. He's essentially issued an ultimatum: serve the public or move out. He clearly sees a conflict of interest between big pharma and public health.
That's quite a statement. And then there's this intriguing detail about former President Trump and Elon Musk being seen meeting right around the time the layoff news broke. Some might call it a coincidence, but what are the possible implications of this meeting, given Musk's, colorful history?
It does raise some important questions about influence and connections behind the scenes. But let's not forget the agency that actually carried out these layoffs, the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE. They're claiming a savings of $600 million for taxpayers.
DOGE, GE, the administration's go-to for streamlining and cost-cutting, but they say their methodology is about more than just slashing budgets, right?
Exactly. They claim to prioritize identifying and preserving key functions while evaluating individual roles rather than setting arbitrary cost-cutting goals. What's fascinating is that DOGE's focus on preserving key functions might reveal a shift in healthcare priorities.
So it's not just about saving money, it's about ensuring essential services continue. To understand what those services are, we need to look at who was spared in this shakeup.
Precisely. And that's where we see a pattern emerging. The administration protected employees in critical areas: refugee resettlement, emergency preparedness, scientific research, frontline healthcare, Medicare and Medicaid, and even those involved in drug approvals at the FDA.
It's like a roadmap of the administration's priorities, isn't it? They're protecting specific functions within HHS while making significant cuts elsewhere. What does that tell us about their vision for the future of public health?
That's the million-dollar question. And to answer it, we need to look closely at who wasn't spared in these cuts, particularly at the CDC. This is where things start to get a little concerning.
The CDC, the agency we rely on to be at the forefront of disease control and prevention, took a major hit in these layoffs. Not only did they lose a significant portion of their workforce, but they also lost all of their first-year epidemic intelligence service officers. Those are the disease detectives, right?
Yes, those are the boots on the ground when outbreaks happen. They're highly trained specialists who track and investigate disease outbreaks, both domestically and internationally.
So losing all of your first-year disease detectives seems like a pretty big deal. What does that mean for the CDC's ability to respond to future health threats?
It's a move that has public health experts very worried. Epidemiologist Caitlin Jetelina, who writes, "Your local epidemiologist," didn't mince words. She called it incredibly dangerous to the biosecurity of the United States. To fully grasp the impact of this loss, you need to understand the vital role these disease detectives play.
Okay, give us the inside scoop. What makes these epidemic intelligence service officers so crucial to public health?
Think of them as elite disease detectives. They undergo rigorous training, learning how to identify, track, and contain outbreaks before they become widespread. They're often the first on the scene, gathering crucial data and coordinating responses to contain emerging threats.
So they're the front line of defense against potential pandemics.
Exactly. They're trained to investigate everything from foodborne illnesses to bioterrorism threats, working to prevent outbreaks from becoming full-blown health crises.
Okay, so losing these officers sounds like a serious blow to the CDC's capabilities.
It is, and it's not just about the immediate loss of expertise. This also impacts the agency's future capacity. One CDC employee stated that losing these officers means losing important capacity. And in a very real sense, we lose our CDC future. This speaks to a sense of uncertainty and demoralization in the agency. Losing those on the front lines could have a ripple effect, impacting everything from recruitment and retention to overall morale and productivity at the CDC.
It seems like the consequences go beyond just numbers and budgets. We're talking about a potential loss of expertise and a hit to the very foundation of the agency responsible for protecting us from disease outbreaks.
And it's happening against a backdrop of growing distrust and uncertainty surrounding the CDC. This move is only going to amplify those concerns.
You mentioned distrust. What's driving that sentiment towards the CDC?
The CDC has faced criticism for its handling of recent public health crises. Some argue that the agency has become too bureaucratic and slow to respond to emerging threats. Others question its messaging and communication with the public.
So these layoffs could be seen as further eroding public trust in the CDC's ability to protect us.
It's definitely a concern, and it raises questions about the long-term impact on the agency's ability to effectively respond to future health threats.
We've talked a lot about the CDC, but the National Institutes of Health, the NIH, also saw significant layoffs. That's the agency responsible for a massive amount of medical research in the U.S., right?
Yes, the NIH is a powerhouse of medical research, funding groundbreaking studies on everything from cancer and Alzheimer's to infectious diseases and mental health.
So what are the potential consequences of cutting their workforce? Could it impact our ability to fight diseases and develop new treatments?
Scientists and researchers are deeply concerned about these cuts. The NIH plays a crucial role in driving medical innovation, funding research that leads to new treatments and cures. Cutting their budget and staff could mean fewer research grants, fewer studies, and a slower pace of scientific discovery. It's not just about responding to immediate threats like outbreaks, but also jeopardizing our long-term ability to improve healthcare for everyone.
We're seeing this paradigm emerge, aren't we? It's not just about immediate cost saving. It's about potentially reshaping the very structure and function of these critical health agencies.
You're absolutely right. And that brings us back to that central question we keep coming back to. What does this restructuring of HHS really tell us about the administration's vision for the future of public health in America? Are they prioritizing efficiency and cost-cutting above all else? Or is there a larger strategy at play?
It's a complex issue. And to make sense of it, we need to consider the broader context, including the involvement of figures like Elon Musk and former President Trump.
Yes, their presence adds another layer of intrigue to this already complicated story. Remember that meeting between them and India's Prime Minister Modi? It happened right as the HHS shakeup was unfolding.
The timing is definitely suspicious, but let's be honest, Elon Musk's presence at that meeting really stands out. He's not just a tech CEO anymore. He's almost like this enigmatic power broker who seems to have a hand in everything these days. What do you make of his involvement in all of this?
It's hard to say for sure what his motives are, but it's highly unlikely that his presence at that meeting was purely coincidental. Musk has been openly critical of government bureaucracy and inefficiency, and he's also expressed interest in leveraging technology to disrupt traditional systems. It's not far-fetched to think he might be interested in playing a role in reshaping healthcare.
Especially considering healthcare is a massive industry ripe for technological disruption. Could this be Musk's way of getting a foothold in the healthcare game?
It's a possibility worth considering. After all, Musk is known for his ambitious ventures. Healthcare represents a vast, largely untapped market for technological innovation. It's also a sector where he could potentially make a significant impact on people's lives.
But we have to be cautious about assuming that Musk's involvement is automatically a good thing, right? He's brilliant, but he's also been known for impulsive decisions and sometimes privatizing profits over people.
Exactly. It's crucial to be vigilant, to scrutinize these developments, and to hold those in power accountable. We can't let the allure of technological innovation blind us to the potential risks and ethical implications.
This brings us back to RFK Jr.'s statement about HHS staffers with ties to the pharmaceutical industry. He essentially issued a warning: serve the public or leave. It's a bold move, but it raises some important questions. What exactly constitutes a tie to Big Pharma? Is it about financial investments, lobbying efforts, research collaborations, or something else entirely?
It's a gray area, and it'll be interesting to see how these new standards are defined and enforced. Some see it as a long overdue crackdown on corporate influence in government. Others worry that it could stifle innovation and limit the development of life-saving drugs. It's a complex issue with no easy answers.
So we've got this multi-layered story unfolding. We have layoffs that appear to be strategically targeting specific areas within HHS, potentially reshaping the agency's priorities and capabilities. We have influential figures like Elon Musk potentially entering the scene. And we have a new HHS secretary who is taking a hard line against corporate influence. It's a lot to unpack.
It is, and it's a reminder that these events aren't happening in a vacuum. They're all interconnected, part of a larger narrative about the future of healthcare in America.
And speaking of a larger narrative, there's one more piece of this puzzle we need to explore: the role of international relations in all of this. It keeps circling back to this meeting between former President Trump, Elon Musk, and India's Prime Minister Modi. It's like a flashing neon sign telling us there's more to this story than meets the eye. What could have been discussed that ties into the HHS shakeup?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? We know that the administration is emphasizing a more streamlined, efficient approach to government. They're talking about cutting costs and reducing bureaucracy. Could this meeting signal a move towards greater privatization of healthcare?
Privatization of healthcare, that's a big idea. Are there any clues in the source material that point us in that direction?
Well, we know that Musk has expressed interest in disrupting traditional systems, and healthcare is a prime target for that kind of disruption. He's also been vocal about his belief in free markets and limited government intervention. Then we have former President Trump, who has advocated for deregulation and a more market-based approach to healthcare. And let's not forget India's role in all of this. India has a rapidly growing pharmaceutical industry and is known for its more affordable healthcare options.
So are you suggesting that this meeting could have been about exploring ways to bring more private sector involvement, potentially even foreign investment, into the U.S. healthcare system?
It's certainly a possibility worth considering. If the administration is looking to reduce the government's role in healthcare and promote a more market-driven system, partnering with private companies, and exploring options like outsourcing certain healthcare services to countries like India, could be on the table.
That's a pretty big if, though. We're speculating here. Do we have any concrete evidence to suggest that this is actually the direction they're headed in?
We don't have concrete proof, but there are definitely some breadcrumbs to follow. For example, one of the reports you shared mentioned that DOGE, the agency responsible for the HHS layoffs, is also conducting a comprehensive review of Medicare and Medicaid. Those are two of the largest government-run healthcare programs in the U.S.
Okay, so if DOGE is reviewing those massive programs, it's not a stretch to imagine that privatization or some form of restructuring could be on the table.
Exactly. And that brings us back to the potential role of someone like Elon Musk. He's got the resources, the technological expertise, and the disruptive mindset to shake up the healthcare industry in a major way.
It's a fascinating possibility, but it's also a bit unnerving, isn't it? The idea of our healthcare system being reshaped by private companies and foreign governments raises a lot of questions.
Absolutely. There are huge implications to consider. What happens to access and affordability? What about quality of care? And who ultimately benefits from these changes? These are questions that need to be carefully examined and debated.
It feels like we're just scratching the surface here. There's so much more to uncover and understand.
That's the nature of a deep dive. We're going beyond the headlines, peeling back the layers, connecting the dots. And in doing so, we're raising more questions than answers. But that's okay. The goal is to spark curiosity, to encourage critical thinking, and to empower you, the listener, to delve deeper into these issues and form your own informed opinions.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. We started with the news of massive layoffs at HHS, explored the potential motivations and implications of those cuts, met the key players driving these changes, and even ventured into the realm of international relations and the possibility of privatization.
It's a complex story with far-reaching consequences. And while we may not have all the answers, we've hopefully provided you with a framework for understanding this evolving landscape and its potential impact on the future of healthcare in America.
So what's the takeaway for our listener? What can they do with this information?
The key is to stay informed, to stay engaged, and to keep asking questions. Don't just accept the headlines at face value. Dig deeper, connect the dots, and challenge assumptions. The future of healthcare is being shaped right now, and it's up to all of us to ensure that it serves the best interests of the people.
That's a powerful message to end on. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us. We encourage you to continue to explore all this story, to challenge your own assumptions, and to form own informed opinions. And until next time, stay curious and stay engaged.